This week on the CNET Tech Review, Google finds it in an instant. A whole slew of iPods are coming your way. A Sony VAIO desktop that's a real stinker. And the best free games for the Palm Pre. Yes, the Palm Pre. It's all coming up right now. Hi everyone, I'm Molly Wood, and welcome to the CNET Tech Review, where we collect our hottest videos of the week and tell you what's good and what's bad in the world of tech, and offer some life-changing tech wisdom in the form of the bottom line. Let's get started with the good. On Wednesday, Google announced a new search feature that they're calling Google Instant. Tom Krazit from CNET News was on hand to get a demo of the newer, faster Google in action.
So Google Instant actually gets queries and gets your search results as you type and brings them to you and streams those results right to your computer. So the search is entirely interactive the whole time you're typing.
So the great thing about Google Instant is that as you are typing the query, results start updating immediately. So I want to kind of paint a situation where perhaps after this launch I want to go on a vacation. I'm not quite sure where I want to go. So I can type in a query like flights to. And what you'll see here is that we have our top 5 predictions for what you might complete to for flights to Hawaii, Vegas, Mexico, or India. And what I can do is I can just arrow down and see these results update immediately so I can kind of browse around. I decided that I want to go to London, and one thing I've always wanted to check out in London is this neighborhood called Notting Hill. So I type in something like Notting Hill, and you'll see here that, again, results update immediately. But it becomes very apparent to me that Notting Hill, as I would type it, actually the #1 hit for that would be the reference to the movie Notting Hill with Hugh Grant. So all I need to do is do a space L to immediately get to the universal result for Notting Hill, London.
Well, why wouldn't I have just typed in another query for London? Like, what advantage does this give me over that?
Well, so you don't actually, one, you don't have to type these extra letters. Mm-hmm. Also, what we notice is that sometimes people, when it takes an extra time to go back up to the query box to complete another or type another search, sometimes people get exhausted. They're like, well, this isn't what I'm looking for. And so we hope that by kind of reducing the barrier to performing another search by making it all update dynamically, that people will actually be more interactive with their queries and add the things that they're looking for to get the results that they want.
Do you think people will find this distracting at all?
So we've run a lot of user tests, and actually it turns out that very many users actually, when we first started, didn't even notice. They're just like, all of a sudden like, wow, those results were there really fast. And we really tried to optimize the design so it wasn't distracting.
Google claims that their new instant search feature can save users 2 to 5 seconds per query. I mean, what am I going to do with all that time I'm saving? Perhaps enjoy my new iPod. All right, I don't actually have a new iPod yet, but there are certainly a lot of them to choose from. Luckily, Donald Bell has reviewed them all. We'll save the iPod Touch for a little later, but here's a look at the new Nano, the Shuffle, and Brian Tong's overview of the new iOS 4.1 update.
Hey, I'm Donald Bell, and today we're taking a first look at the 6th generation Apple iPod Nano. Comes in 7 colors and 2 capacities, an 8GB model for $149 and a 16GB version for $179. Compared to the previous model, they've chopped off the click wheel, shrunk the screen, and oddly they've dished the video camera that they made such a big deal about last year. They've also put a clip on the back similar to the iPod Shuffle, and on the top you have buttons for volume and a screen lock. Now, to make up for the missing click wheel, Apple is using a tiny touchscreen that measures about 1 inch square. You get little icons similar to the iPhone that control music playback, photos, radio, a pedometer, and even a clock. The screen lets you browse your music collection by flicking up and down, and you can also back out of menus by flicking back. You can even reorient the screen by pinching 2 fingers together and twisting it around. It's fun to play around with such a unique and small touchscreen, but I gotta say, for all its novelty, the new interface isn't much better than the click wheel in any practical way. If anything, it's more difficult to operate by feel, which is kind of important if you're actually using this while driving or exercising. I'll hand it to Apple though for finding a way to make the smallest Nano yet, but I also have a hard time believing that anyone really thought the last version of the Nano was too big. Plus, at half the size, you're also getting half the features. There's no video playback, no camcorder, games, calendar, notes, contacts, or alarm clock. That said, I have to admit the features you do get are fairly incredible for such a small size. The main focus here is music, and you should get around 24 hours of music playback from a single charge. You get icons for your music library, playlists, Genius mixes, as well as shortcuts for artists, albums, songs, genres, composers, audiobooks, and podcasts. You can customize the arrangement by pressing and holding any icon and shifting it around. There's also a shake to shuffle feature that you can turn on or off in the settings menu that can play a random selection of songs when you give the player a shake. Beyond that, you also get a built-in radio which has the unique ability of pausing live broadcasts for up to 15 minutes. You can also rewind anything you hear on the radio, which is pretty cool. Photos on such a small screen are really just for fun, and you can't set your own image as a wallpaper. Under settings though, you can go back and swap out the wallpaper for one of Apple's own designs. There's a fitness app that includes a pedometer, and there's also support for the Nike Plus fitness system, but you'll need to plug in the Nike receiver into the 30-pin dock connection in order to make that work. Another hidden feature is voice memos, which you'll only see if you plug in a compatible headset with a microphone. The same goes for Apple's VoiceOver feature, which will announce track information for you if you have a pair of headphones with a compatible remote control. The headphones bundled with the Nano are just your plain old Apple earbuds, which we strongly recommend upgrading from for the sake of sound quality, but also for the sake of extra features. A remote also gives you the ability to skip and pause songs without looking at the screen, which is really useful if you're using this for exercising. Last but not least, there's the clock. It's an analog clock face, and we have to believe that manufacturers are going to find some creative way to turn this thing into a watch. By flicking on the screen, you also get access to a stopwatch and a timer. So that's the 6th generation Apple iPod Nano, the smallest Nano yet, but definitely a step backwards in terms of iPod features. If you're not sold on the small size, the cool little touchscreen, or the unmistakable Apple design, you can stretch your dollar a lot further with an older model or going with an iPod alternative. For CNET.com, I'm Donald Bell.
Hey there guys and gals, Brian Tong here with CNET.com, and iOS 4.1 will be available shortly, but we have it here, so we wanted to show you the new goodies that you guys can look forward to. Now the most popular one that you'll probably be using is taking high dynamic range photos. If you go into your camera app in iOS 4.1, you'll see a button that says HDR off. To use the feature, turn it on, take a picture, and it will take a high dynamic range photo, but it will also save a version of the picture without the effect. HDR photography combines a series of photographs shot at different exposures. One is underexposed where everything is darker, and one is overexposed where everything is lighter. So it takes the best parts of these photos, they're put together into one that brings out the details in both the shadows and highlights. Now I took several shots to show you the feature in action, but some photo purists don't like the effect because it can feel fake to them, and it sometimes even appears grainier. Now if you only want to save the HDR version of the photo, jump into your settings, then go to Photos, and there's an option you can set to keep normal photo, so you can turn that on or off. You'll also get Game Center in iOS 4.1, which is a social gaming network. It has game invites, leaderboards, and achievements, so you guys can think of it like Xbox Live on your iDevice for free. You can tell this hasn't been released to the public yet because Apple is still using its street lingo, and there are no Game Center games available at the moment, but this is another feature that I can't wait for. Now, in the iTunes app, Apple's music social network called Ping is fully integrated into the experience, so I can follow artists or friends. At the moment, I can't search for people to follow on the mobile app. I can follow people already following me, or I can follow the few artists that are featured, but I'm not really desperate enough to add Yo-Yo Ma just yet. So it looks like you'll need to use iTunes on your computer to really get the full experience. Another new feature in the iTunes app is having the ability to now rent TV shows directly from your iOS devices with the update. And one feature that I've been waiting for is getting the ability to now upload HD videos that you've taken to YouTube and MobileMe over Wi-Fi. I'm Brian Tong for CNET.com, and there's your first look at iOS 4.1 before it releases.
Hey, I'm Donald Bell, and today we're taking a first look at the 4th generation Apple iPod Shuffle. This is Apple's smallest, most basic iPod, offered with 2 GB of storage and priced at $49. It comes in 5 colors and includes a pair of basic earbuds and a USB headphone jack adapter for syncing and charging with your computer. This is a return to form for the Shuffle. It made a detour last year with this buttonless design, but now it looks very similar to the popular 2nd generation model. Aside from the obvious play, pause, skip, and volume controls on the front, all the other controls are located on the top of the player. There's the power switch that also works to set the mode between shuffled and sequential song playback. There's a headphone jack, which is also used for charging and syncing music. There's a teeny tiny battery indicator light. And finally, there's a new button which triggers the voiceover feature. Now, voiceover is a very cool feature and it's a carryover from last year's shuffle. It gives you the ability to figure out what song is currently playing, and more importantly, it allows you to navigate between playlists, Genius mixes, podcasts, and audiobooks. You just press the button once to hear the artist and song info.
Neighborhood number 1, Tunnels, The Arcade Fire.
Or hold it down to access the menu and use the buttons on the front to navigate through the playlists.
All songs. Alt pop mix. Electronica mix. Hip hop rap mix.
This feature is a big advantage over the first and second generation shuffles, which were basically only good for playing a random selection of songs. You can now have separate mixes for your workouts or your morning commute, or use this to play audiobooks without worrying that all the chapters are going to get mixed up. The voiceover feature is also improved from the third generation model, since the button is now right on the player instead of the special headphone cable, so you can use any pair of headphones you want. Finally, let's talk about the clip. The clip on the back feels sturdy and is made out of the same anodized aluminum as the rest of the player. One complaint we have is that the smaller, square design no longer leaves room on the front for where the clip gets pinched. As a result, when you clip this on, you're probably going to wind up squeezing the back button by accident. Overall, it's a surprisingly decent little audio player with better sound quality than the second generation model it resembles. Battery life is rated at 15 hours, which, for something the size of a Coke button, is pretty amazing. So that's it. That's the 4th generation Apple iPod Shuffle, an incredibly tiny, affordable audio player, perfect for anyone who goes to the gym or who likes to travel light. For CNET.com, I'm Donald Bell.
Oh, the Shuffle. I'm so glad the buttons are back. All right, moving right along, if you're a Palm Pre-owner and you were kind enough to remind us about the lack of WebOS software featured on Tap That App, we hear you loud and clear. Take it away, Brian.
Oh, you're the sprinkler. Oh. Hey guys, welcome to Tap That App. I'm Brian Tong, and this is the show where we cover the hottest apps in the mobile space. Now, we've heard your cries to show some love for the WebOS, so we're giving it to you with a few of the best free games on the Palm Pre and Palm Pixie. Now remember, these are free. You won't find many 99-cent games on Palm's App Store, and you probably aren't looking to pay over $5 for any games, so these are a few time wasters that we found for you. Now first up, if you like zombies, you'll like Zombies Fury. Run around to avoid zombies and tap, tap, tap on their heads to shoot them, but whatever you do, do not run out of ammo, because if they catch you, you're dead. Now, Topple Ball Mini is also free and includes 11 levels and has you directing a ball into a goal using the accelerometer. The full version with 200 levels is 99 cents. If you like classic games, check out Destroids. It pays homage to Asteroids and probably has some of the best replay value out of all the free WebOS games. Now, this game may not have the best graphics, and it's the helicopter game. It's pretty simple. Just hold your finger on the screen to go up and release it to drop down and see who can get the furthest and get the highest score. And if you like flying, check out Air Traffic Light. A full version will be released later, but here you can direct planes and helicopters to their proper landing zones and be the best air traffic controller you can be. So there are some free games for the Palm Pre and Pixie that we love to tap because they're absolutely free. And if you guys have any other show ideas, apps, or dance moves you'd like to see the other editors do, then send us along an email to tapthatap@cnet.com. I'm Brian Tong. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Sprinkler.
There you go, Palm folks. Don't say we never gave you anything. Although, you know, if those are the best free games available, you can kind of see why poor Palm isn't on the show much. I'm just saying. Let's go ahead and take a quick break, but stick around. We'll be back with a whole lot more tech review right after this, and it's about to get ugly. Welcome back to the CNET Tech Review, our weekly digest of all things good and bad we've seen here at CNET TV. And guess what? You are just in time for the bad. This week in the bad, we've got not one, but two new products that have earned a great big thumbs down. First up, there's the Aero, Dell's attempt to re-enter the smartphone market. Now, it's rare for Bonnie Cha to really tee off on a phone, but this, you've got to see.
Hey everyone, I'm Bonnie Cha, Senior Editor at CNET.com, and I'm here with your first look of the Dell Aero for AT&T. This Android phone was announced back at the spring CTIA show, and it's Dell's first smartphone in the US. So far, I've got to say I'm not too impressed. I was hopeful when I first saw the phone's design. It's one of the slimmest and lightest Android phones I've seen to date. And even though it has a mostly plastic construction, I think it still feels pretty solid. Because of the smaller size, the screen measures just 3.5 inches diagonally, but I found that it was fine for most tasks, and it's also pretty sharp. But navigation is where things start to go downhill. As you can see, the Aero doesn't have the standard Android controls below the screen. Instead, the back button is located here on the left side, and it doubles as the home key when you do a long press. On the right side, you get a button that acts like the menu option on other Android devices. With time, I could maybe get used to it, but overall I think it just makes using the phone harder than it needs to be. I like having quick one-touch access to these shortcuts, and I really missed having a dedicated search key. And Dell's custom UI doesn't really add much either. You can have up to 10 home screen panels, but there's a very limited number of widgets. Also, the on-screen portrait keyboard is pretty horrible. Unfortunately, the news doesn't get any better when you move on to the phone's features. First of all, the Aero ships running Android 1.5, which is already bad enough, but to make matters worse, some of the basic functions are pretty limited. For example, the phone won't pull contact information from your various accounts like Facebook and Gmail. I could only get my Exchange content synchronized with the phone. The phone is also pretty sluggish with just a 624 megahertz processor. There are slight delays when opening apps, and it even gets slower when you're working with multiple programs open. I really wanted to like the phone and see Dell back in the mobile space, but compared to other smartphones out there, the Aero just doesn't compare. Even though it's pretty affordable at $100 with contract, I think it's worth spending $30 more to get the HTC Aria, which gives you more features and better performance. Or if you want to stay within the $100 price range, you'd get more out of the Palm Pre Plus or the older iPhone 3GS. I'm Bonnie Cha, and this has been your first look at the Dell Aero for AT&T.
The on-screen keyboard is pretty horrible? Ouch! And that's not all for the bad. Next up, an all-in-one desktop from Sony that, well, I'm just gonna let Rich tell you for himself.
Hi, my name is Rich Brown, Senior Editor for CNET.com. Today we're going to take a look at the Sony VAIO J114FX. So this is a $699 all-in-one desktop. It comes with a 21.5-inch screen, Blu-ray player, and it also has a touch interface. That said, while this might seem like a pretty decent home entertainment PC, it's really a pretty poor value for the dollar. There are a number of other systems in this price range that have 23-inch displays, and in general, the system is very slow. It has a budget CPU, and it's the slowest in its price class, so it's definitely not meant for productivity. We also found that in general, it's really underfeatured. It has a small hard drive, poor connectivity, and generally speaking, this is not a very good PC. We would definitely suggest to keep shopping. So starting with the screen, this is actually a 1080p display, despite the fact that it's 21.5 inches. It can handle Blu-ray discs with no problem. The problem is when you get online. We tested with a number of different video sources online. We went to Netflix, we tried iTunes. The problem though is with YouTube. When we tried to play 1080p video content, it wasn't able to handle it very smoothly. We even updated the Flash player to make sure everything was nice and current, and still the system couldn't quite hack it. Now we mentioned that this is a touchscreen, and you can see there's a little drop-down menu here. Gives you a nice big icon dock so you can open the various apps. There's a browser, a couple other Sony-made media players. Nothing too outstanding though, and it's all just pretty easy to ignore or use as you want. The system also comes with a wireless mouse and keyboard. Now the keyboard is pretty obviously based on Apple's chiclet key design. That said, that's an attractive design, so you wouldn't really have a problem putting this system and its keyboard on display anywhere in your home. Now looking on the side of this VAIO, it actually maybe looks like it has some interesting features. You've got a couple SD card slots up here, you've got analog audio down here, a couple USB ports, as well as a FireWire 400 jack. Unfortunately, that's about as far as the connectivity options go. You get two USB ports on the back as well as an Ethernet port, but that is it. The system has Wi-Fi built in, of course, but there's no TV tuner, there's no eSATA, no digital audio outputs, and worse, there's no HDMI in. Now, HDMI in is great for an all-in-one because it lets you connect to all kinds of other devices like a game console or a cable box, and it lets you create sort of a self-contained home entertainment unit. Now, we'd forgive the system's slow performance if it had an HDMI in because that would really let you make the system a pretty powerful home entertainment setup. Without that, the system is basically a small screen with a Blu-ray player and a web browser. There's really not a lot here to justify its high price. So overall, this is a definite do not buy recommendation from us. I'm Rich Brown. This is the Sony VAIO J114FX.
A definite do not buy recommendation. Ouch again. Our guys are tough. That's why they're good. But maybe we should move along to this week's bottom line before somebody gets hurt. Last week, Steve Jobs told us the iPod Touch is the most popular iPod. Well, here's Donald Bell once again to show us why the latest model will probably continue that trend.
Hey, I'm Donald Bell, and today we're taking a first look at the 4th generation Apple iPod Touch, a CNET Editor's Choice for 3 years in a row. This isn't a radical departure from the iPod Touch we know and love, but there are some noticeable improvements. In terms of price, you're looking at 3 different models, an 8GB, 32GB, and 64GB version priced at $229, $299, and $399. All of the hardware features from the previous versions have been preserved. You still have a 3.5-inch capacitive touchscreen, only now it's using Apple's higher resolution Retina display. There's a home button on the bottom, a screen lock at the top, though now the button is shifted from the left to the right, and you have controls for volume on the side here, but there are now 2 different distinct buttons instead of one single rocker switch. On the bottom you have a headphone jack, a dock connection, and a teeny tiny speaker grill. If you take a look at the back, you'll notice 2 things. First, the chrome steel doesn't bulge out quite as much as the previous version, giving a slightly thinner profile, a lighter feel, and the ability to lay flat on the table without wobbling. But the really big change is the camera lens up here at the top, along with this little omnidirectional microphone. This is an HD video camera that can capture 720p footage at 30 frames per second. Just like the iPhone, you can use the built-in editor to trim your video clips or spend an extra $4.99 on an iMovie app with more advanced features. The camera takes still frames too, but the camera quality isn't nearly as good as the iPhone 4. Now, if that weren't enough, Apple is also giving you another video camera on the front with a lower resolution. You can use this same camera for snapping self-portraits, but its main purpose is for making video calls using Apple's FaceTime app. By using email addresses instead of phone numbers, you can make free video calls over Wi-Fi to other compatible iPhones or iPod Touches. It's a cool feature, it works well, and Apple puts the new app right here at the top of the menu. Under the hood, you have a few significant improvements which have trickled over from the iPhone 4, including an A4 processor and a gyroscope sensor for detailed 3-axis motion control in games and other apps. You also have support for 802.11n Wi-Fi and existing support for Bluetooth 2.1. Compared against the iPhone 4, you don't get the phone, the 5-megapixel camera, GPS, or a 3G data connection, but you also don't have to deal with contracts. The rest of the iPod Touch is just as you'd expect. The core apps for email, web browsing, music, photos, and video are all better than ever under iOS 4. You now have the new ability to rent TV shows. Games look and perform better than ever. With the internal mic, you no longer need a microphone headset or an adapter to take advantage of audio recording or the voice memo app. And some third-party camera and video apps now work as well. So that's the 4th generation Apple iPod Touch. If you've been waiting to make an upgrade, I really feel that the 2 cameras, the FaceTime calling, and all the little performance tweaks really makes this year's model worthwhile. For CNET.com, I'm Donald Bell.
The bottom line this week, an iPhone without a contract. That's what Steve Jobs called the iPod Touch, so now you can do all the same cool stuff your friends do with iPhones for a lot less money. And that's our show. Join us again next week for a brand new CNET Tech review. Until then, there are tons of great videos available every day at cnettv.com. See you next time, and thank you for watching.